Good evening. It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday the 27th of April, and this is Scotland at 7 on Broadcasting Scotland. I'm Andrew Wilson, and this evening I'm presenting the programme from Edinburgh. First of all, we have the daily coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,906,612 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,681,133 have been confirmed negative, and 225,479 have tested positive. There are 133 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all of those with symptoms will be tested. There is one new reported death of someone who has tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,653. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 81 were in hospital last night, 11 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 2,782,162 people had received their first dose of a COVID-19 vaccination, and 1,102,690 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 127,451 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, and that is an increase of 17 from yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not only in hospitals. We also have an ONS update this evening. The percentage of people testing positive for COVID-19, that's the positivity rate, has decreased in England and Wales in the latest week. That's the week ending the 16th of April 2021. The positivity rate appears to be level in Wales and has decreased in Northern Ireland over the last 2 weeks. Hospital admissions in England decreased slightly in the week ending 18 April, and the number of registered deaths involving COVID-19 in England and Wales decreased in the week ending the 16th of April, although trends in deaths should be interpreted with caution because of the potential impact of the recent Easter bank holidays. The number of all deaths registered in England and Wales in the week ending 16 April 2021 was 10,438. Of these deaths, 3.5%, that's 362, mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, and that's a decrease from the previous week. The total number of deaths registered was 0.8% lower than the 5-year average, and trends in deaths should be interpreted with caution again because of the potential impact of the recent Easter bank holidays on the week ending the 16th of April 2021. COVID-19 was the third most common cause of death in both England and Wales in March 2021. Turning now to the Scottish election, Nicola Sturgeon says only the SNP offer experienced leadership to drive economic recovery. Nicola Sturgeon has today urged Scottish voters to back the SNP as the only party with the experience to lead Scotland through the pandemic and into an economic recovery. Campaigning in Wigton, the SNP leader warned that Scotland cannot afford to leave key powers in the hands of the job-destroying Tories at Westminster. She also highlighted a number of key policies the SNP will take forward to support jobs during the recovery, including £33 billion in infrastructure projects over the next 5 years in a national infrastructure mission, directly supporting around 45,000 jobs and providing benefits across Scottish supply chains. To deliver a further 100,000 affordable homes over the next decade, backed by £3.5 billion of investment over this Parliament, which will support 14,000 jobs each year. £500 million to support new jobs and to reskill people for the jobs of the future, a £100 million Green Jobs Fund, investing alongside businesses and organisations to support new and increased opportunities for green job creation across Scotland. A National Transition Training Fund to support workers whose jobs are at risk and provide retraining opportunities for high-tech, high-skilled jobs and the provision of green skills to support Scotland's transition to net zero. A new £20 million Rural Entrepreneur Fund, providing grants of up to £10,000 to support the creation of 2,000 new businesses. And finally, to maintain the Small Business Bonus Scheme for the lifetime of the Parliament, under which 100,000 small businesses in Scotland pay no rates at all. Elsewhere in the election, the Scottish Greens have revealed plans for national parks. The Scottish Greens today unveiled ambitious proposals to expand and upgrade Scotland's national and regional parks. A new report from the party builds on their manifesto commitments to expand Scotland's national and regional park network, with the aim of making them a centrepiece in their efforts to tackle the climate and nature emergencies. This includes establishing at least 2 new national parks in the next Parliament, as well as new regional parks, giving park authorities greater powers of how land is used within their boundaries, increasing environmental protections, putting more land into public ownership, and ensuring all parks benefit from ranger services. Scottish Greens highlighted the plans to develop a commercial theme park in Loch Lomond as an example of why better protections are needed. Initially, the Flamingo Land proposals were thrown out after it became the most unpopular planning application in Scottish history. However, Scottish Enterprise still support the development at that site. Speaking ahead of a visit to Loch Lomond, Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvie said that it was a Scot who invented the notion of a national park, so it's shameful that we have so few here in Scotland. Mr. Harvie went on to say that those that we do have are in poor condition and are under threat. Comparing Scotland with the American national parks, he said that ours are not run for and by the people, but instead are dominated by grouse shooting and commercial developments that threaten vital wildlife habitats. The Scottish Greens have plans to renew national and regional parks as part of what they describe as a bold, coordinated effort to restore nature and tackle the climate and nature emergencies. Mr. Harvie said, "This level of ambition is only possible if our national and regional parks are invested in and have the protection of park authorities with real powers, so that the public and local community interests can be put ahead of commercial interests like Flamingo Land." Moving to Westminster now, Boris Johnson and his Tory government are under pressure over leaks and sleaze. Boris Johnson is today under growing pressure over his COVID comments, the number 10 flat refurbishment, and allegations of sleaze. There have been fresh claims and mounting evidence of making abhorrent COVID comments and repeatedly failing to listen to warnings over the pandemic today. As of this morning, The Times reports fresh claims Boris Johnson repeatedly told aides in September he would rather let it rip than go into a second lockdown, describing that as mad. 2 witnesses have told ITV they are prepared to swear on oath if Boris Johnson continues to deny the claims that he told aides in October he would rather let the bodies pile high in their thousands than go into the second lockdown. The BBC, The Guardian and Politico website have also spoken to witnesses and officials who have confirmed the comments. The SNP has called for the Prime Minister to come to Parliament to make a statement and, if the claims are true, to announce his resignation. The SNP also demanded Boris Johnson come clean and publish the full details of his dodgy donor flat refurbishment, including full details of any money paid into his personal bank account, as further revelations emerged of the growing Tory sleaze scandal. It follows reports that the Tory party paid £58,000 for the refurbishment of the flat, including wallpaper at £840 a roll, a baby bear sofa at £9,800, a lily drum table at £3,000, and one armchair at £5,900. Kirsten Oswald MP said the allegations of impropriety and potential illegality and concerns over Tory money laundering could not be answered satisfactorily unless the full details are released. A new poll has found that half of UK voters believe that there is a culture of sleaze within the Tory government following the Greensill lobbying scandal. A Redfield and Wilton Strategies poll, commissioned by the I newspaper, found that 50% of people in the UK agree with the statement that there is a culture of sleaze in the UK government, with only 11% disagreeing. That poll also found that even Tory voters are more likely to agree than disagree with the claim. This news comes amid an ongoing row over lobbying in Westminster, with widespread concern about informal contacts and lobbying between the Tory government and businesses. It was revealed that former Prime Minister David Cameron sent texts to the Chancellor and other ministers on behalf of the finance firm Greensill Capital. Also in Westminster today, Ian Blackford has warned against devastating Tory cuts. The SNP Westminster leader, Ian Blackford, has said today that Scotland's recovery is far too important to leave it in Westminster's hands, responding to Boris Johnson telling his cabinet to prepare for cuts. The Prime Minister has ordered Tory cabinet ministers to undertake a savings and efficiency review of UK government departments ahead of a spending review. It follows the Tory decision to impose a public sector pay freeze, universal credit cuts, and tax hikes on millions of workers at the budget in March. Meanwhile, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack is one of 5 Tory cabinet ministers who have joined a new hard-right lobby group called the Free Market Forum, which aims to make the case for a return to a smaller state as soon as possible. The other members include Home Secretary Priti Patel, International Trade Secretary Liz Truss, Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, and the Work and Pensions Secretary Therese Coffey. The High Court has ruled to allow a judicial review over the Prime Minister's decision on Priti Patel's alleged bullying. Boris Johnson's decision to back Priti Patel and to disregard the findings of his advisor on ministerial standards that the Home Secretary had bullied staff can be challenged in court, a hearing has ruled. The FDA union has been granted permission to launch a judicial review of the Prime Minister's decision, despite being challenged by the government in the High Court. It means that the union will be able to argue at a future court hearing that Johnson's interpretation of the ministerial code should be subject to the rule of law. Responding to Tuesday's decision, which is a first step towards a judicial review, the union's General Secretary Dave Penman said that the ministerial code is the only means by which civil servants can raise complaints against the conduct of ministers, and it is vital that decisions on this are subject to the rule of law. Mr. Penman said ministers should be held to the same standards of conduct as civil servants. He welcomed the opportunity now granted to argue that point fully, that the Prime Minister erred in his interpretation of the ministerial code when deciding that the Home Secretary did not break the code. Sir Alex Allen left his advisory role in Downing Street after Johnson contradicted his advice by judging that Patel did not breach the rules, despite being found to have bullied staff. The FDA's lawyers asked the High Court in England on Tuesday to grant permission for a full hearing over the judicial review claim. In international news, medical supplies now flow into India as COVID-19 deaths near 200,000. Vital medical supplies began to reach India today as hospitals, starved of life-saving oxygen and beds, turned away coronavirus patients, and a surge in infections pushed the death toll close to 200,000. A shipment from the UK, including 100 ventilators and 95 oxygen concentrators, arrived in the capital, New Delhi, although a spokesman for Boris Johnson said the UK had no surplus COVID-19 vaccine doses to spare. France is sending 8 large oxygen-generating plants this week, and Ireland, Germany and Australia are sending oxygen concentrators and ventilators, an Indian Foreign Ministry official said, underlining the crucial need for oxygen. India's first Oxygen Express train pulled into New Delhi, laden with about 70 tonnes of oxygen from an eastern state. But the crisis has not abated in the city of 20 million people at the epicentre of the latest wave of infections. The World Health Organization said it was working to deliver 4,000 oxygen concentrators to India, where mass gatherings, more contagious variants, and low vaccination rates have sparked the outbreak. With vaccine demand outstripping supply in the world's second most populous country, 2 US drug makers have offered support. Gilead Sciences said yesterday that it would give India at least 450,000 vials of its antiviral drug remdesivir, and Merck & Company announced today that it was partnering with 5 Indian generic drug makers to expand production and access to its experimental COVID-19 drug molnupiravir. Elsewhere, Finland will end its state of emergency as COVID-19 cases there drop. Finland should end its COVID-19 state of emergency as infection rates decline, the Prime Minister Sanna Marin said today, adding that the issue would go before Parliament. Ms. Marin said, "We see that the conditions no longer call for the emergency powers legislation." On April 9th, the Finnish Prime Minister had presented a plan to relax restrictions in the run-up to summer. The state of emergency was declared on March the 1st because of a third spike in COVID-19 infections that had begun in late January. The daily number of coronavirus infections has been decreasing since mid-March, and Finland remains among the countries least affected by the pandemic. The nation of 5.5 million people has recorded 86,161 cases, 908 deaths, and has 132 people hospitalised due to COVID-19. Elsewhere in Europe, opponents have forced a referendum in Switzerland on same-sex marriage. Swiss voters will get a final say on whether same-sex couples can marry after opponents gathered enough signatures to force a binding referendum on a 2020 law allowing them to wed. That legislation also allowed transgender people to change their legal gender with a declaration, in a major change for a country that has lagged behind other parts of Western Europe in gay rights. The Swiss government certified that opponents had gathered enough support to call a referendum under the nation's system of direct democracy. It will in May set a debate for the vote, which could come in September at the earliest, a spokesman said. Opponents had decried fake marriages and said only a man and a woman could wed. A survey commissioned by a gay advocacy group, Pink Cross, in 2020 showed that more than 80% of Swiss support same-sex marriage, suggesting the law would take effect even if subjected to a referendum. Across the Atlantic in the United States, there are reports that Joe Biden has performed better than Trump over his first 100 days. More than half of Americans approve of President Joe Biden after nearly 100 days on the job, according to Reuters and Ipsos polling, a level of support that his Republican predecessor Donald Trump never achieved, and one that should help Democrats push for infrastructure spending and other big-ticket items on Biden's agenda. The national opinion poll of 4,423 adults from April 12 to 16 found that 55% approved of Biden's performance in office, while 40% disapproved, and the rest were not sure. Biden received the highest marks for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, with 65% supporting his response. In January, 38% approved of Trump's handling of the health crisis, 90% of Democrats, 61% of independents, and 39% of Republicans said they approved of Biden's response, the poll showed. And back in Scotland, the Blairs Museum is to reopen on Friday. The Blairs Museum in Aberdeen will reopen on Friday 30th April 2021 after an extended period of closure arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. Blairs Museum offers a unique insight into Scotland's Catholic history and heritage, with spectacular collections spanning more than 500 years. It is located on South Deeside Road, Blairs in Aberdeen, and is housed in part of the former National Junior Seminary. A special exhibition this year is titled Caparoni and the Papal Court. It comprises a fascinating set of hand-coloured engravings by the artist Giuseppe Caparoni, depicting the people of the Papal Court and the religious orders in Rome between 1823 and 1846, the year in which Pope Pius IX was elected. These colourful images all clearly depict real individuals and give a lively impression of life in Rome at this time. Commenting on the reopening, museum curator Eleanor Vickers said, "We look forward to welcoming visitors back to the museum this year and hope that they will find our new exhibition on the artist Caparoni is of interest. It is exciting to be developing our new website, which should let everyone, no matter where, enjoy the museum and its collections." Now, that is a shorter news in Scotland at 7 this evening. We expect to have more guests on the programme on the following days later this week. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. If you would like to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland. You will find the link to do that on the screen now. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, be it behind the scenes or in front of the cameras or elsewhere, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, thank you everyone for joining us this evening on Broadcasting Scotland, and please have a great evening.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.